A small repair shop sat at the edge of a dusty road in Manila, where the heat shimmered off cracked pavement and the smell of motor oil mixed with street food from nearby vendors. Inside, three mechanics in grease-stained shirts gathered around a sleek sports car, shaking their heads as they debated what was wrong with the engine. The owner, a wealthy businessman in an expensive suit, paced impatiently, checking his watch every few seconds. Outside, a thin man in faded clothes and worn-out rubber slippers walked past, his shoulders hunched from exhaustion. His name was Nestor, and his stomach had been empty since yesterday morning. He stopped at the shop's entrance, drawn by the sound of frustrated voices and the gleam of that beautiful machine. His eyes lingered on the car with a look that went beyond admiration, something deeper, like recognition. Nestor stepped forward hesitantly, his voice barely above a whisper, as he asked if he could take a look at the car in exchange for a simple meal. Just rice and anything they could spare. The mechanics turned to him, and their faces shifted from confusion to mockery. One of them laughed loudly, nudging his friend as he looked Nestor up and down. Another made a comment about beggars thinking they were engineers now. The third mechanic waved him away dismissively, telling him to go find a street corner somewhere else. The businessman barely glanced at Nestor, too annoyed by the delay to care. Nestor's face flushed with shame, but he didn't move immediately. His eyes stayed fixed on the engine, and he could hear it, really hear it. He knew exactly what was wrong, but hunger and humiliation weighed heavy on his pride. He turned to leave, his slippers scraping against the concrete. Just as he reached the doorway, the businessman exploded in frustration, shouting that he needed this car running for an important race exhibition tomorrow, that he'd already paid these mechanics good money, and they couldn't figure out something so simple. The word race hung in the air, and Nestor stopped. He turned back slowly, his voice steadier this time. He told them he could fix it in 10 minutes. Not for money, just for food. The mechanics erupted in laughter again, louder this time. One said something cruel about how desperate people will say anything. But the businessman, desperate himself now, threw up his hands and said, "Fine, let the man try. What did they have to lose?" Nestor approached the car like he was greeting an old friend. His hands, calloused and weathered, moved over the engine with unexpected grace and precision. He didn't ask for tools at first, just listened, his ear close to the motor. Then he pointed to a specific component, asked for a wrench, and began working. The mechanics watched with crossed arms and smug smiles, waiting for him to fail. But their smiles faded as they watched his hands move with absolute certainty. He adjusted, realigned, and fine-tuned with the kind of expertise that comes from thousands of hours behind a wheel and under a hood. His movements were surgical, precise, without hesitation. Within 8 minutes, he stepped back and told the businessman to start the engine. The car roared to life with a sound so pure and powerful that even the mechanic's jaws dropped. It purred like it had just rolled off a factory line. The businessman stared at Nestor with new eyes, really seeing him for the first time. He asked who Nestor was, where he learned to work on high-performance engines like this. Nestor smiled softly, sadly, and said he used to race. He used to be somebody, used to have a team, sponsors, a future. But one bad crash, mounting medical bills, family obligations, and a series of unfortunate decisions had left him here, on the streets, his past life feeling like someone else's dream. The businessman's face went pale. He stepped closer, studying Nestor's face more carefully, and suddenly recognition struck him like lightning. He whispered a name, a racing name that the mechanics had heard before. Nestor the Ghost, the driver who could make any car dance, who had won championships, who had been destined for international glory before he disappeared. The mechanic's mockery turned to stunned silence. The same men who had laughed at him minutes ago now couldn't meet his eyes. One of them mumbled an apology that sounded hollow in the thick air. Nestor didn't acknowledge it. He simply asked again about the food, his voice carrying no bitterness, just tired acceptance. The businessman wouldn't hear of it. His name was Ricardo, and he owned a racing team. He insisted on paying Nestor properly, asked him to come to the race exhibition tomorrow, offered to help him get back on his feet. But Nestor shook his head gently. He explained that some bridges burn completely, that some falls are too far to climb back from. He'd made peace with where life had taken him. He just wanted to eat today, and maybe tomorrow he'd figure out the rest. Ricardo didn't just give Nestor food that day. He took him to a restaurant and sat with him while he ate. He listened to Nestor's story without judgment. And then Ricardo made an offer, a job, first as a mechanic, someone who could solve problems the regular team couldn't. No pressure, no spotlight, just honest work for honest pay. Nestor wanted to refuse. Every instinct told him not to hope. But there was a hunger in his soul now, a hunger to matter again, to use the skills that had defined him. He accepted. The months that followed weren't magical, but they were real. Nestor worked quietly in Ricardo's garage, his expertise becoming invaluable to the team. And gradually, when his body had healed and his spirit had recovered, Ricardo offered him something he'd never dared to dream about again. A chance to drive, not for fame, but for the pure love of it. Nestor never forgot the taste of that first meal after 2 days of hunger. He never forgot the shame of being mocked, but he also never forgot that his skill, his true worth, existed whether people recognized it or not. Circumstances had stripped away everything external, and what remained was who he really was, and that couldn't be taken away. The mechanics learned something too, though the lesson came with shame. Every person walking through that door carried a story they couldn't see. Every face marked by hardship held experiences that poverty couldn't erase. They had judged a book by its cover and nearly missed witnessing greatness. From that day forward, they treated every person with basic human dignity because they finally understood that circumstances don't define capability and hunger doesn't diminish worth. Nestor's story spread not as a tale of redemption, but as a reminder. Skills and talent don't vanish because life gets hard. Dignity doesn't disappear because someone falls on difficult times. And sometimes the person you dismiss today is the same person who could change your tomorrow. The question isn't whether someone deserves respect based on their current situation. The question is whether you're wise enough to offer it regardless,